A cold autumn wind swept through the dusty streets of Knights Ferry, California, as Olivia Kingston pressed her tear-stained face against the tiny window of her modest home. The year was 1874, and the world outside seemed as gray as the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Inside, the small room that should have been filled with a child's laughter remained silent, save for her quiet sobs. The empty crib in the corner, lovingly built by her late husband, stood as a painful reminder of dreams unfulfilled. 3 months had passed since both typhoid fever and childbirth had visited her home on the same terrible night, taking her husband Thomas and their newborn daughter in one cruel sweep. Olivia, at 26, had become both widow and childless mother in the span of hours. The doctor had told her afterward that she might never conceive again. The modest ranch she now struggled to maintain sat just outside Knights Ferry, a once booming mining settlement that had found new life as a trading post along the main route into the Sierra Nevada. At one time, the Kingston homestead had shown promise. Thomas had been ambitious, hardworking, good with the few cattle they'd managed to acquire. Now the place was slowly falling apart around her. A knock at the door startled her from her grief. Wiping away tears with the back of her hand, Olivia crossed the weathered wooden floor, her black mourning dress sweeping behind her. She hadn't been expecting visitors. "Who is it?" she called, voice still thick with emotion. "Mrs. Kingston, it's Margaret from the general store. I've brought some supplies and that medicine you ordered." Olivia opened the door to find not only Margaret, but also the town's newest arrival, a tall, broad-shouldered man with kind eyes that contrasted sharply with his weathered face. He held a wooden crate of supplies. "This is Preston Galloway," Margaret explained. "He's just taken over as foreman at the Collier Ranch. Mr. Galloway, this is Mrs. Olivia Kingston." Preston removed his hat, revealing thick dark hair with touches of silver at the temples. He appeared to be in his early 30s. "Madam," he said with a respectful nod, "I offered to help Margaret deliver these when I saw how heavy they were." "Thank you," Olivia said quietly, stepping back to allow them inside. Margaret bustled in with her usual energy, placing a small package on the table. "The laudanum you asked for is here, though I hope you won't need it much longer. Dr. Williams says too much isn't good for a body." Her eyes traveled to the empty crib in the corner and her expression softened. "Oh, Olivia," Olivia turned away, unable to bear the sympathy. "Just put everything on the table, please." Preston set down the crate, his gaze also catching the crib. Something flickered across his face, recognition, perhaps, of the particular kind of pain that filled this house. He said nothing, just began unloading supplies with an efficiency that suggested he understood her desire for normalcy. "How's the ranch holding up?" Margaret asked, trying to shift to safer conversation. "Jenkins mentioned your south fence was down after that storm last week." "I haven't had time to check," Olivia admitted. "There's so much." She trailed off, the magnitude of her situation suddenly overwhelming. Preston cleared his throat. "I could take a look at it for you, madam. I've got some free time tomorrow morning." "I couldn't ask. You didn't ask." "I offered," he said simply. "Neighbors help neighbors out here. That's how we all survive." There was something in his steady gaze that made Olivia pause. Not pity, which she had grown to despise, but something like understanding. "I can pay you," she said stiffly. A small smile crossed his face. "We can discuss that later, Mrs. Kingston." After they had gone, Olivia stood in her doorway watching Preston help Margaret back onto her wagon. He moved with the easy confidence of a man who had spent his life working outdoors. As they pulled away, he turned once and tipped his hat to her. That night, for the first time since the funerals, Olivia slept without laudanum to quiet her mind. And if she dreamed of kind eyes in a weathered face, she didn't acknowledge it come morning. True to his word, Preston arrived early the next day, leading a dappled mare and carrying tools. Olivia met him on the porch, having risen at dawn to bake bread, a small gesture of hospitality she felt obligated to offer. "You didn't need to trouble yourself, Mrs. Kingston," he said, accepting the coffee she offered. "It's no trouble, and please call me Olivia," he nodded. "Olivia, then." He sipped the coffee. "This is good. Been a while since I had anything but my own terrible brewing." "Have you been in Knights Ferry long?" she asked, surprising herself with the interest. "About a month, came up from San Diego way, needed a change." Something in his tone suggested there was more to the story, but he didn't elaborate. "I should take a look at that fence before it gets too hot." Olivia watched from the porch as he rode the perimeter of her property. He moved with the natural grace of someone who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. When he returned, his expression was serious. "It's worse than just the south fence," he said. "Your eastern boundary is nearly down too, and I spotted at least 3 of your cattle wandering on collier land." Olivia's heart sank. "I didn't realize it was that bad." Preston dismounted, tying his horse to the porch rail. "When's the last time you had help around here? Jenkins comes by sometimes, but he's got his own place to run." She hesitated. "Thomas, my husband, he did most everything. Then after." She gestured vaguely, unable to finish. Preston studied her face, then looked out over the struggling ranch. "I've got Sundays off and evenings. I could help get things back in order." "Why would you do that?" she asked, suspicion edging into her voice. Widows with land often found themselves targets of men with opportunistic intentions. "I've been where you are," he said quietly. "Lost everything once. Someone helped me when they didn't have to. Figure it's time I pass that on." Something in his tone rang with truth. Olivia found herself nodding. "I can't pay much. We'll work something out." He put his hat back on. "I'll bring some men from the collier place tomorrow to start on those fences. Today, I'll round up your strays." Over the next few weeks, Preston became a fixture at the Kingston ranch. True to his word, he brought hands from the collier spread to repair fences. He spent his Sundays helping with the heavier work around the place, and often rode over after his duties at the collier ranch to check on things. Olivia gradually began to emerge from her grief. Having another soul to cook for gave structure to her days. The necessity of running the ranch forced her back into the world. Little by little, she found herself watching for Preston's arrival, appreciating his quiet competence and the respect with which he treated her. One evening in early December, Preston arrived as a light snow began to fall, unusual for that part of California. He carried a small pine tree over his shoulder. "What's this?" Olivia asked, opening the door wide. "Christmas is coming," he said simply. "Thought the place could use some cheer." Together they set up the tree in the corner opposite the crib, which Olivia still couldn't bring herself to remove. Preston produced a small bag of cranberries, and they spent the evening stringing them into garlands while snow fell softly outside. "Tell me about your husband," Preston said quietly as they worked. Olivia's hands stilled. No one had asked her that before. Most people avoided mentioning Thomas as if speaking his name might shatter her. He was kind, had big dreams for this place. Wanted to build it into something that would last. She threaded another cranberry. "He was so happy when he found out about the baby." Preston nodded. "And you, were you happy about the baby?" "More than I can say," she whispered. "We tried for 3 years when it finally happened." She trailed off, tears threatening. "I'm sorry," Preston said. "Shouldn't have brought it up." "No, it's all right. I need to be able to talk about them." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the occasional pop as a needle pierced a cranberry. "I had a wife," Preston said suddenly, "and a son, back in '65, just after the war." Olivia looked up, surprised. "What happened?" "Influenza took them both. Boy was just 2. His fingers worked steadily despite the pain in his voice. "I went a little crazy after, drank too much, picked fights. Drifted from ranch to ranch. Wasn't until an old foreman in Arizona knocked some sense into me that I started living again instead of just breathing." Olivia's heart ached for him. How did you go on?" Preston looked up, his eyes meeting hers. "One day at a time. Some days just 1 hour at a time. And I learned that the pain doesn't really go away, but it makes room for other things eventually." Something passed between them, then a recognition, a shared understanding that few others could truly comprehend. Olivia felt her walls begin to crumble. As winter settled over Knights Ferry, Preston's visits became more frequent. He brought news from town, small gifts, practical things like a new axe handle or a repaired lantern. Sometimes he stayed for supper, telling stories that actually made Olivia laugh, a sound she had thought lost to her forever. The townsfolk noticed. Whispers began about the widow and the cowboy. Some were kind, others less so. Margaret defended them fiercely in the general store when Mrs. Hobbs suggested impropriety. "That man has done nothing but help her keep that ranch from falling apart," Margaret snapped. "And if you'd lost what she has, you might appreciate a kind word and a helping hand, too." One Sunday in January, Preston arrived to find Olivia struggling with the ranch ledgers at her kitchen table. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her normally neat hair was coming loose from its pins. "Bad news?" he asked, hanging his hat on the peg by the door. "The worst kind," she sighed. "Numbers that don't add up. I've gone through everything 3 times. We're going to be short on the bank note next month." Preston pulled up a chair. "Let me see." Together they went through the accounts. The situation was clear. Between medical bills, funeral costs, and the decline in productivity of the ranch, Olivia was facing financial ruin. "I could take out another loan," she said, though the thought clearly terrified her. "No," Preston said firmly. "That's just delaying the inevitable. You need income. What do you suggest? I can't exactly go work at the saloon." The bitter joke fell flat between them. Preston was quiet for a long moment. "Your north pasture, it's good grazing land." "Yes, but we only have 17 head left. It's mostly empty." "I've been saving to buy my own place," he said slowly. "Not enough for a full ranch yet, but I could buy 40 head. If you'd let me graze them here and split the profits come spring drive, it would see you through until next year." Olivia stared at him. "You'd invest your savings in my failing ranch." "It's not failing. It's wounded like its owner." The words hung in the air between them. "Both can heal with time and care." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Preston reached across the table, his calloused hand covering hers. "Because you matter, Olivia. Your survival matters." That evening they sat before the fire talking of practical things: cattle breeds, spring grazing, the logistics of their new partnership. But something fundamental had shifted between them. A door had opened, just a crack. As February turned to March, the partnership flourished. Preston moved his cattle onto Kingston land and spent even more time at the ranch. He began teaching Olivia things Thomas had never shared with her: how to mend fences, identify sick cattle, negotiate with buyers. One evening, they returned from checking on a pregnant heifer, both muddy and laughing about Preston's near fall into the creek. As they reached the house, Olivia impulsively invited him to stay for supper. "I'd like that," he said, "but I should clean up first." "You can use the wash basin on the back porch," she offered. When Preston returned, face and hands clean, hair still damp, Olivia was struck by how comfortable his presence had become in her home. They moved around each other in the kitchen with an easy familiarity, him slicing bread while she stirred the stew. Over dinner, Preston spoke of his plans. "I'm thinking we might expand the herd if this year goes well. The Collier place is good, but..." He hesitated. "But what?" "But it's not mine, never will be." He met her eyes. "A man wants something of his own eventually." The implication hung in the air between them. Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "Yes, I suppose he does." Later, as Preston prepared to leave, they stood awkwardly at the door. "Thank you for supper," he said, hat in hand. "Thank you for everything else," she replied. He hesitated, then stepped closer. Gently, giving her every chance to step back, he leaned in and brushed his lips against her cheek. "Good night, Olivia." After he left, Olivia touched her cheek where the warmth of his lips lingered. For the first time in months, she felt something bloom inside her that might, with time, become happiness. The next morning, Olivia woke to the sound of hoofbeats approaching. Assuming it was Preston, she hurriedly dressed and pinned her hair, a small flutter of anticipation in her stomach. But the voice that called out was unfamiliar. "Mrs. Kingston, you in there?" She opened the door to find a young rider from the Collier ranch, his expression grave. "Madam, there's been an accident. Mr. Galloway was thrown from his horse while checking fence lines. He's hurt pretty bad. Doc Williams is with him at the main house." The world seemed to tilt beneath Olivia's feet. "How bad?" "Don't rightly know, madam. He was unconscious when they brought him in. Mr. Collier sent me to fetch you." 20 minutes later, Olivia was dismounting at the Collier ranch, heart pounding in her ears. The foreman's cabin was a small building near the main house. As she approached, Dr. Williams emerged, wiping his hands. "Mrs. Kingston," he nodded gravely, "he's asking for you." "How is he?" The doctor hesitated. "Concussion, 3 broken ribs and a badly broken arm. The next few days will tell. If infection doesn't set in, he'll recover, but it'll be a long road." Olivia entered the dimly lit cabin. Preston lay on a narrow bed, his face alarmingly pale except for a dark bruise spreading across his temple. His right arm was splinted and bandaged against his chest. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow. "Preston," she said softly, taking the chair beside his bed. His eyelids fluttered open. For a moment he seemed confused, then recognition dawned. "Olivia, you came. Of course I came." She took his uninjured hand in hers. "What happened?" "Snake spooked my horse," he mumbled. "Stupid mistake, wasn't paying attention." He tried to sit up and winced. "Lie still," she ordered. "Dr. Williams says you need rest." "The cattle," he began, "can wait. Focus on healing." He gripped her hand. "Our agreement, I promised to help with Preston Galloway. Stop worrying about the ranch right now." A weak smile crossed his face. "Yes, madam." Over the next 2 weeks, Olivia split her time between her ranch and Preston's bedside. The Collier hands helped with the most pressing work on her place, repaying the many times Preston had assisted them. In the evenings, she would bring food to the foreman's cabin, sometimes reading to Preston when his headaches were too severe for conversation. As he began to recover, their conversations deepened. Preston spoke of his childhood in Missouri, his brief service at the end of the Civil War, the years of drifting after losing his family. Olivia shared stories of her own growing up the daughter of a schoolteacher in Sacramento, meeting Thomas at a harvest dance, their early struggles and dreams. One evening, as a spring rainstorm lashed against the windows, Preston asked about her plans for the future. "I never thought beyond survival," she admitted. "After Thomas and the baby died, just getting through each day took everything I had. And now," his eyes held hers steadily, "now I'm starting to believe there might be a future worth planning for." As April arrived, Preston was finally well enough to return to work, though Dr. Williams strictly limited his duties. Mr. Collier, recognizing Preston's value, accommodated his recovery, allowing him to focus on the bookkeeping and planning rather than physical labor. The arrangement meant Preston spent even more time at the Kingston ranch, often working at Olivia's kitchen table while she prepared meals or mended clothes. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, discussing ranch business that gradually gave way to more personal conversations as the evenings lengthened. One Sunday, Olivia returned from church to find Preston waiting on her porch, a small bouquet of wildflowers in his hand. She felt her heart quicken at the sight of him standing there, hat in hand, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "These are for you," he said, offering the flowers. "Not much, but they reminded me of you when I rode past." Olivia accepted them with a smile. "They're beautiful, thank you." "I was wondering," he said hesitantly, "if you might consider riding into town with me next Saturday. There's a social at the church, music, dancing, might be nice too." He trailed off. Olivia realized he was asking to court her properly. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. "Preston, Too soon," he said quickly. "I understand, forget no," she interrupted. "It's not too soon, I'd like that very much." The smile that spread across his face warmed her to her core. That evening, they sat on her porch watching the sunset, talking of small things and comfortable in their silences. When he finally rose to leave, Preston took her hand and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Good night, Olivia." As she watched him ride away, Olivia felt something she had not experienced in many months' hope. The social was the first time Olivia had attended a community event since the funerals. She wore her best dress navy blue rather than black, a small step away from mourning. Preston arrived in a clean white shirt, his dark vest and trousers brushed free of dust, his usually unruly hair slicked back. "You look beautiful," he said simply when she opened the door. They rode to town together in her small wagon, Preston driving with his good arm. The church hall was decorated with spring flowers, lanterns casting a warm glow over the gathered townspeople. Heads turned as they entered together, whispers following in their wake. Margaret immediately bustled over. "Olivia, I'm so pleased you came. And Mr. Galloway, you're looking well recovered." "Thank you, madam," Preston said politely. "Mrs. Kingston was kind enough to accept my escort." The fiddle music started up and couples began to take the floor. Preston turned to Olivia. "Would you care to dance?" "I'm not much good with this arm still healing, but I can manage a slow one." Olivia hesitated. She hadn't danced since before her pregnancy. "I'm not sure I remember how." "Then we'll remember together," he said, offering his arm. They moved awkwardly at first, both conscious of his injury and the eyes upon them. But gradually the music worked its magic. Preston's hand was warm and steady at her waist, his eyes never leaving hers as they turned slowly around the floor. "People are staring," she murmured. "Let them," he replied. "They'll find something new to gossip about next week." As the evening progressed, Olivia felt layers of grief peeling away. She laughed at Preston's stories, accepted punch from Mrs. Collier, even joined a circle of women discussing the spring planting. When they finally left, she felt lighter than she had in months. On the drive home, Preston was quiet, his face thoughtful in the moonlight. "I had a wonderful time," Olivia said, breaking the silence. "Thank you for encouraging me to go." Preston pulled the wagon to a stop at the crossroads before her ranch. He turned to face her, his expression serious. "Olivia, there's something I need to say." Her heart skipped. "Yes, I care for you, more than as a neighbor or a business partner." His voice was steady but gentle. "I know you're still healing. I know Thomas will always have a place in your heart, but if you could find room there for me too someday, I'd consider myself the luckiest man alive." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes. "Preston, you don't need to answer now," he said quickly, "or even soon. I just wanted you to know where I stand. I'll wait as long as you need." Olivia reached for his hand. "I care for you too," she whispered. "I didn't expect to, didn't think I could ever feel this way again, but you've brought light back into my life when I thought all was darkness." Preston's expression transformed, hope and tenderness evident in his gaze. Slowly, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers, a gentle, questioning kiss that she answered with a certainty that surprised them both. When they parted, Preston rested his forehead against hers. "I should get you home before your reputation is completely ruined," he said with a soft laugh. As spring turned to summer, Preston and Olivia's courtship blossomed openly. He continued to split his time between the Collier ranch and hers, but now their partnership extended beyond business. They rode together checking fences, worked side by side in her garden, and spent quiet evenings on her porch watching the sunset. The first time Preston stayed for breakfast after working late repairing her roof, tongues wagged in town. But when Mr. Collier himself endorsed their relationship at Sunday service, the gossip largely subsided. In a frontier town, practical considerations often outweighed conventional propriety, and no one could deny that Kingston Ranch was thriving under their combined care. One warm evening in July, they sat together on the porch after supper. Olivia had been unusually quiet all day, and Preston sensed something was troubling her. "What's on your mind?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then stood. "Come with me." Preston followed her into the house, to the small room that had remained closed since his first visit. Olivia's hand trembled slightly as she opened the door. Inside, the empty crib still stood in the corner, draped with a small blanket. A rocking chair sat beside it, and on the wall hung a portrait of Thomas, his kind face smiling out from the frame. "This would have been the nursery," Olivia said softly. "I haven't been able to change anything." Preston stood quietly, understanding the significance of her bringing him into this sacred space of grief. Olivia moved to the crib, running her hand along its smooth rail. "Thomas built this himself. He was so excited." Her voice caught. "Our daughter only laid in it once after. After they were both gone, I held her here and said goodbye." Preston came to stand beside her, not touching, just present. "What was her name?" "Emily," Olivia whispered. "Emily Rose Kingston." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "The doctor said I might never have another child." That the difficulties with her birth. She couldn't continue. Gently, Preston turned her to face him. Olivia, look at me. When she raised her tear-filled eyes, he continued, I need you to understand something. I'm not here to replace what you lost. Thomas will always be your first love. Emily will always be your daughter. If you choose a life with me, they come with us. They'll always be part of who you are, part of what I love about you. A sob escaped her. And if I can never give you children, then we'll have each other, he said simply. And that would be more than enough for me. Olivia stepped into his embrace then, burying her face against his chest as years of held-back grief finally flowed freely. Preston held her, murmuring soft words of comfort as she cried for all she had lost. When her tears finally subsided, she looked up at him with reddened eyes. I think I'm ready to move forward now, not to forget, but to build something new alongside the memories. Preston brushed a strand of hair from her damp cheek. I'm here, whatever you need. That night marked a turning point. The next day, Olivia opened the windows in the nursery, letting fresh air and sunlight pour in for the first time in nearly a year. The crib remained, but no longer as a shrine to loss, instead, as an honor to a love that had been real and precious. As August arrived, bringing with it the hottest days of the year, Preston finalized his plans to leave the Collier Ranch. Their cattle partnership had proven successful, and they had discussed combining their operations fully. I've saved enough to build a proper house, Preston told her one evening as they walked along the creek that bordered her property. Nothing fancy but solid, room to grow. Olivia glanced at him. Where would you build it? Preston stopped walking, turning to face her. That depends on you. On me? He took her hands in his. Olivia Kingston, I love you. I think you know that by now. I want to build a life with you, here on this land that means so much to you. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to help you heal and grow and find joy again. He took a deep breath. I'm asking you to marry me. Though she had sensed the question coming, Olivia still felt her heart race at his words. Preston, are you certain, after everything I've told you about the doctor's concerns? More certain than I've been about anything in my life, he answered without hesitation. Children or no children, you're the future I want. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, but these were different from the tears of grief he had witnessed. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. Preston's face lit with joy. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her around once before setting her down and kissing her thoroughly. When they finally parted, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. I promise you won't regret this. I know, she said simply, and in that moment she truly did. They married 2 weeks later in the small church in Knights Ferry. The ceremony was simple but joyful, attended by neighbors and friends who had witnessed their journey. Margaret arranged flowers from Olivia's own garden, and Mr. Collier stood as Preston's best man. Olivia wore a dress of pale blue silk, a gift from Preston, with wildflowers in her hair. When Pastor Adams pronounced them husband and wife, the smile that illuminated her face was radiant with a happiness she had once thought forever lost to her. That evening, they returned to the Kingston Ranch, now the Galloway Ranch, as husband and wife. Preston carried her across the threshold despite her laughing protests, setting her down gently in the home that would now be truly theirs together. Their first night as husband and wife was tender and unhurried. Preston's gentle patience allowed Olivia to move past her nervousness, and in his arms, she found a passion she had not known she was capable of feeling. As they lay together afterward, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, Olivia felt a deep sense of rightness settle over her. Happy. Preston murmured, stroking her hair. More than I thought possible, she answered truthfully. The first months of marriage brought adjustments for both of them. Preston moved his few possessions into the house, adding his books to her shelves, his clothes to the bureau, his saddle to the hook by the door. They established new routines: coffee together at dawn, working the ranch side by side during the day, quiet evenings planning their future. Preston began construction on a larger house closer to the creek, working on it whenever time allowed. Olivia often brought him lunch, sitting with him in the shade of the oak trees as he described his vision for their home. 3 bedrooms, she questioned one day, looking at his rough drawings. Just in case, he said, watching her carefully, and for visitors meanwhile. Olivia nodded, appreciating his optimism without sharing it fully. The doctor's words still echoed in her mind, tempering her hopes despite her happiness. In October, as they approached their 2-month anniversary, Olivia began feeling unwell in the mornings. At first, she attributed it to the changing seasons, perhaps a mild autumn cold. But after a week, a different possibility began to form in her mind. She said nothing to Preston, not wanting to raise hopes that might be crushed. Instead, she visited Dr. Williams in town while Preston was attending the cattle auction in Sonora. The doctor examined her carefully, asking questions about her symptoms and cycles. When he finally sat back, his expression was cautiously optimistic. "Mrs. Galloway, I believe you may be expecting," he said. "It's early days yet, and given your history, we'll need to be vigilant, but the signs are promising." Olivia felt dizzy with the news. "But you said—" "I said it might be difficult, not impossible," he corrected gently. "And sometimes the body heals in ways we don't fully understand. I want you to rest as much as possible, especially as you enter the later months." She rode home in a daze, torn between elation and terror. The memory of her last pregnancy's tragic end loomed large, shadowing her joy with fear. By the time Preston returned that evening, she had composed herself, deciding to wait until she was more certain before sharing the news, but Preston knew her too well. As they sat at supper, he studied her face. "Something's happened," he said. "What is it?" Olivia set down her fork. "I saw Dr. Williams today." Alarm crossed Preston's face. "Are you ill?" "No," she took a deep breath. "Preston, I'm going to have a baby." For a moment he stared at her, shock evident in his expression. Then he was on his feet, coming around the table to kneel beside her chair. "A baby, you're certain?" she nodded, tears filling her eyes. "Doctor Williams says it's early, and given what happened before, we should be cautious," but Preston's whoop of joy cut her off. He gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of precious glass. "A baby," he repeated, wonder in his voice. "Our baby." His unguarded happiness loosened the knot of anxiety in Olivia's chest. "You're pleased, then?" He drew back to look at her, astonishment on his face. "Pleased, Olivia, there aren't words." His hand moved to rest lightly on her still flat stomach. "I know you're frightened, I am too. But we'll face this together, whatever happens." That night, as they lay in bed, Preston pulled her close against him, his hand protective over the place where their child grew. "I was thinking," he said softly, "if it's a boy, perhaps we could name him Thomas." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes at the generosity of spirit in this man she had come to love so deeply. "I'd like that very much, and if it's a girl—" "Emily," he suggested. She shook her head. "No, Emily belongs to the past, to a different life. This child deserves their own name, their own story." Preston kissed her temple. "Whatever you wish." As winter settled over Knights Ferry, Olivia's pregnancy progressed well. Dr. Williams visited regularly, pronouncing himself pleased with her health and the baby's development. Preston threw himself into completing their new house, determined that Olivia would have a fresh start for this new chapter of their lives. The community rallied around them. Women who had previously kept their distance, uncertain how to approach a grieving widow, now brought gifts and advice. Mr. Collier sent 2 of his men to help Preston with the house construction. Even Mrs. Hobbs, the town's most notorious gossip, presented Olivia with a hand-knitted blanket. "Second chances are rare in this life," the older woman said gruffly. "Make the most of yours." Christmas came, bringing with it the first real snow Knights Ferry had seen in years. The new house was nearly complete, lacking only interior finishes. Preston had insisted on a proper fireplace in every room, determined that his wife and child would never be cold. On Christmas Eve, they sat before the fire in their current home, the small pine tree decorated with cranberry strings and paper stars. Preston had carved a wooden horse for the baby. "Every child needs a first toy," he explained, while Olivia had secretly made him a new shirt, finer than any he had owned before. As the fire crackled and snow fell softly outside, Olivia felt the baby move within her. She took Preston's hand and placed it where their child kicked. His face, illuminated by firelight, showed such tenderness that her heart seemed to expand in her chest. "I never thought I'd have this again," she whispered. "A family, a future to look forward to." Preston's eyes held hers. "When I first saw you, standing in this room with so much grief around you, I wanted nothing more than to ease your pain. I didn't expect to find my own healing in the process." He placed a gentle kiss on her forehead. "You saved me as much as I saved you." In February, with snow still on the ground but the promise of spring in the lengthening days, they moved into their new home. It stood on a gentle rise overlooking the creek, surrounded by young trees Preston had planted. Inside, the rooms were spacious and bright, with large windows to catch the southern light. The nursery was Preston's masterpiece, a sunny room with walls painted a soft yellow. He had built a new crib, larger and sturdier than the one that still stood in their old house. Olivia had suggested bringing the original, but Preston had gently disagreed. "That crib belongs to Emily," he said. "It holds her memory. This one is for our child, different but both made with love." As March arrived, bringing the first wildflowers and the scent of renewal, Olivia entered her final month of pregnancy. Her fear had not entirely disappeared, but it had been tempered by Preston's unwavering confidence and support. One night, as a spring storm lashed against the windows, Olivia woke to the first contractions. They were mild yet unmistakable. She touched Preston's shoulder. "It's time," she said simply. What followed was a night both terrifying and transcendent. Preston rode through the storm to fetch Dr. Williams, returning with both the doctor and Margaret, who had experience assisting at births. Through hours of labor, Preston never left Olivia's side, his steady presence anchoring her through waves of pain and fear. When memories of her last birth threatened to overwhelm her, he would lean close, his voice calm and certain. "This time is different. You're stronger, I'm here, we'll meet our child together." As dawn broke, painting the sky with gold and pink, Olivia gave a final push and their daughter entered the world with a lusty cry that seemed to echo through the house and across the ranch beyond. "A girl," Dr. Williams announced, placing the red-faced, squirming infant on Olivia's chest. "A perfect, healthy girl." Olivia stared down at the tiny life they had created, the dark hair, the scrunched face, the impossibly small fingers. Beside her, Preston made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob, his hand gently touching their daughter's head with a reverence that brought fresh tears to Olivia's eyes. "She's beautiful," he whispered, "like her mother." Later, when the doctor had gone and Margaret had helped Olivia bathe and change, Preston sat beside them on the bed, unable to take his eyes off his daughter. "What shall we call her?" Olivia asked. Preston considered. "Hope," he said finally, "because that's what she brought us both." "Hope Galloway?" "Hope," Olivia repeated, testing the name. It felt right, a testament to the journey that had brought them to this moment. "Hope it is." As spring melded into summer, the Galloway Ranch flourished along with its newest member. Hope grew quickly, a happy baby with her father's dark hair and her mother's expressive eyes. Preston proved to be a natural father, as comfortable rocking his daughter to sleep as he was breaking horses or mending fences. The old house became a bunkhouse for the two young men they hired to help with the expanding cattle operation. The empty crib remained in what was now a guest room, no longer a source of pain, but a gentle reminder of the path that had led them to their current happiness. On warm evenings, they would often sit on the porch of their new home, Hope sleeping in Olivia's arms, the cattle grazing peacefully in the distance. Sometimes they spoke of the future of Hope's education, of possibly expanding the ranch, of siblings for their daughter someday. Other times they simply sat in comfortable silence, content in each other's company. One such evening, as the sun set over the western hills painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Preston took Olivia's hand. "You remember the first time I came here?" he asked. "With Margaret and the supplies, of course," she replied. "You offered to fix my fence. I saw you standing there looking so lost and alone, and something in me just—" He paused, searching for words. "I knew then that I wanted to help you find your way back." Olivia leaned against his shoulder, hope nestled between them. You did more than that. You showed me there was a new path altogether. Preston kissed the top of her head. I'm glad I found my way to Knights Ferry. So am I, she whispered. As darkness settled over the ranch, stars emerging one by one in the velvet sky, Olivia thought of how life could change so dramatically in the space of a year. From deepest grief to profound joy, from emptiness to fullness, from an uncertain future to one rich with promise. In her arms, Hope stirred and opened her eyes, gazing up at her mother with perfect trust. Beside them, Preston hummed softly, a lullaby his own mother had once sung to him. The moment held a perfection that Olivia knew was both precious and fleeting, all the more valuable for its impermanence. I love you, she said, the words encompassing both her husband and their child. Both of you so much. Preston's arm tightened around her shoulders. And we love you, always will. As Hope drifted back to sleep and nighthawks called in the distance, Olivia sent a silent thank you to whatever force had brought Preston Galloway to her door that day. The journey from that moment to this one had not been easy, but every step had led them here, to this family they had built together from the ashes of loss. The empty crib that had once symbolized all she had lost now represented something different, a bridge between past and present, grief and joy, endings and beginnings. And if she listened very carefully on nights like this, she could almost hear the whisper of Thomas and Emily blessing the new life she had found. What are you thinking about? Preston asked softly, noticing her pensive expression. Olivia smiled, settling more comfortably against him. About how endings can become beginnings, about how love expands to fill the spaces grief leaves behind. Preston nodded, understanding as always. Like the land after a fire, seems destroyed but new growth comes, different but beautiful in its own way. Exactly like that, she agreed. They sat together as full darkness embraced the ranch, the future stretching before them, not perfect, perhaps, but theirs to shape together. And in that knowledge, Olivia found a peace she had once thought lost forever. Hope grew stronger each day, her laughter filling their home with a joy that seemed to radiate outward, touching everything around them. The ranch prospered under their joint care, the cattle herd expanding, the land responding to their stewardship. One evening, nearly a year after Hope's birth, Olivia found Preston in the nursery, watching their daughter sleep. He stood so still, his expression so intent that she hesitated in the doorway, loath to interrupt his moment of contemplation. When he finally sensed her presence and turned, there were tears in his eyes. "What is it?" she asked softly, coming to stand beside him. "I was just thinking about how complete she is," he whispered, "how perfect, and how close we came to never having her at all." Olivia slipped her arm around his waist. "But we did have her. She's here." "Sometimes I wonder if your Thomas and my Sarah somehow brought us together," he said. "If they're watching over us, pleased with what we've built from our broken pieces." The thought was comforting rather than painful now. "I think they would be," she replied. "They loved us enough to want our happiness even without them." Preston drew her close, their bodies fitting together with the easy familiarity of deep love. "I thank God every day for second chances," he murmured against her hair. In the crib, Hope sighed in her sleep. One small hand curled around the carved wooden horse that never left her side. Outside, the night birds called, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote sang to the rising moon. Inside, within these walls they had built together, Olivia Kingston Galloway held tight to the man who had taught her heart to love again, surrounded by the quiet miracle of their shared life. And it was enough, more than enough. It was everything.